But I wasn't happy. And I wasn't happy for one of the reasons that I've come to understand by talking with Bill Utah. Models are only sufficient. There are an infinity of models that can fit data. And models may describe data, they don't explain it, per se. What was missing in my explanation? I mean, geez, equations were good enough for Newton. You know, he had these equations of motion of the world, and when somebody said, well, what's the mechanism of this gravity business? He said, bingo non-hypothesis. I don't make hypotheses about mechanisms. No. I got them mapped. Isn't that enough for you? He didn't know. He would love to have made hypotheses about mechanisms, but he didn't know. No, so it's not quite enough. So what was missing from my account? It took me a couple of years to find that out. And I had to go deep into the literature to find out what was missing from my account. Way back. Now the guy on the left is Plato. And he's pointing up to his theories of forms. The forms that are the reality and from which we subsume the particulars of life. Aristotle, my man now, Aristotle is pointing at the earth saying this has to be grounded in empirical observational data. Both together are really good. Both together. So Aristotle gave me the rest that I needed, and Steve alluded to that. No, unfortunately, it's going to be a long lecture because we're still back in negative years. Think about negative. Can years have negative numbers? Does that take time off your life? What does it mean? How about imaginary numbers? So Aristotle had 4 modes of explanation he called idiom. And that wisdom was lost to the Dark Ages. When it was disinterred, it was, of course, misconstrued. And they translated idiom as causes. And that's not the proper translation in Greek, I'm told by some philosophers. The proper translation is be-causes. So it should be Aristotle's 4 be-causes. And they help me understand why I needed more than just math. Now, to remind you of what these are, efficient causes are triggers. They're the events that occur before a change of state and bring it about. They could be necessary or sufficient, or there could be more sophisticated criteria. Why did Socrates die? Because he drank hemlock. Okay? That was the sufficient cause of the exclusive reliance on efficient causes is called mechanistic. Material causes are the substrates. Explaining a thing in terms of its machinery is the most real explanation to a lot of people. Many people aren't happy with the phenomenon until they can open the hood, look underneath, see what's inside, even if they don't understand what's in there. You buy a car, you look underneath, oh yeah, good, yeah, nice car. No, that's the air cleaner. Oh yeah, nice. It's an important component of understanding a thing. Excessive reliance on it is called reductionism. Final clause is what brought it about, the reasons for its existence. Biologists gave Aristotle a really bad time because of final causes. They thought, that poor old benighted guy, he was okay for his time, but he actually thought something that occurred after event could come around and be an efficient cause. No, he didn't think that. He thought it was a different mode of explanation. It wasn't an efficient cause. It was the reason of human. So, why was Socrates put to death? Put to death because he was the enemy of state. Any explanations in terms of purpose, any explanations in terms of reinforcement, any explanations in terms of evolution are explanations about final causes. They have a proper place in all accounts of behavior. If I gave you all other causes of a gizmo, like this gizmo here, and didn't tell you what it did, you wouldn't have a complete explanation. It's here because it points at things. And then finally, we have formal causes, which are the maps, models, and such that we were talking about that we inherited completely. This is perhaps the most tenuous interpretation of formal causes, but I think it's correct. For Aristotle, formal cause was his favorite formal cause was things like syllogisms, and for physicists, differential equations, and so forth. Theory. Models don't force particular mechanisms. So simple harmonic motion is a powerful model, and it can predict behavior of car wheels, of pendula, of oscillation of molecules, and so forth. So No single kind of cause gives complete explanation of behavior. For comprehension, you need all four kinds. No, it's silly to argue about reductionistic because I really understand it if I look at the brain. Or if I light up the brain here and here, I really understand it. That's just one component. It has to be embedded. It can be embedded at many levels. So for learning, for instance, causes that trigger it might be an event that happens that's not consistent with expectations. A surprising event that's powerful either positively or negatively will trigger learning. The substrates are synaptic plasticity that we study. The final causes of it are what it achieves, reinforcement, or in the longer outcome, survival of the animal that can learn. And then the formal explanations of learning are things like the Risforda-Weiner model and other. And this can be nested. It can, you can apply it one level down and have the same format work on neural systems, or one level up for behavioral social systems. So it's not tied to any one level. And it can go earlier in the chain of causality and later in the chain of efficient causality. So I want to mention a couple of studies I've done. I don't have time to talk really about one more of them and then some general lessons. But I have time to spend a few moments on each. One of them was a cartoon theory of timing that had legs. Greg and I were coming back from a trip to San Diego's labs, and we were pissing and moaning about a very cognitive theory of behavioral timing called scalar expectancy theory. And so we said, well, how could we account for the same data with a really minimalist, reductionist behavioral account? So we said, essentially, well, animals we know engage in adjunctive behavior, so they go through sequences of them, and if you ask, is time short or long, they look to see what they were doing. It's sort of like, well, we're in Rome, it must be Thursday kind of explanation. And we expected that mostly just to be a thumb to the nose. It actually worked, and it lasted a surprisingly long time. It's the paper of mine that's most heavily cited. Always surprised me. So having fun, what you're doing, can be a good thing. We all know the behavioral account of superstition, illusory correlation. I didn't believe animals to be that dumb. People maybe, but not pigeons. So I asked them. I put them in scenarios where there was ambiguous causality, and I asked them, okay, did you cause that event? Did you cause that event? They were very good. I analyzed it with detection theory, and I could show their D prime, their accuracy was really high. What was strange, though, they were strongly biased to what we call internal locus of control. They took responsibility for everything. Change payoff a little bit, they would move very nicely. So when you think about it, they're hungry, pecks are cheap. Why not assume that they did it? If they assume they didn't, they're not going to change the world. It's a healthy bias to assume that you are effective in things. And in fact, hanging around saying, no, I don't think I caused that, is a much more dangerous bias in most animals that must survive in the wild. So we analyzed superstition as signal detection. We know that with time, we sometimes go 1001, 1002, 1003. Why do we do that? What is the nature of timing that makes that effective? That was fun to look at. It involved a quartic equation I didn't know how to solve, so I turned to a mathematician, Neil Weiss. We got a good lead on that. I won't dwell on it. ER2K glitch in the brain. What happens if we have counters in the brain that when they roll over, they don't roll over the next one? And they don't have to be decimals, they could be binary, so this could happen a lot. Turns out there are good data, weird data by Christofferson that suggests something weird is going on.